the Eagles absolutely dragged Patrick Mahomes, Andy Reid and company 40-22. I really would have loved it to be a shutout. We had the 34-0, 40-6. We're going to have a lot of topics about the Super Bowl here, but of course, we'll start with our takeaways. What'd you love from this game? What did it tell you? The floor is yours, JV.
Yeah, no, the game as a whole was, I think, a shock to me, a shock to a lot of people. Could have gone either way, AJ. It was Philly's game, it was Kansas City's game, but for it to have been a blowout, and in my eyes, it was 40-6. Like, that was my final score. The last few touchdowns from Kansas City was pretty much garbage time irrelevance that Philly knew they were taking home the championship. My only major takeaway from the game was Jalen Hurts is that guy. And I've been preaching it all year long. You can tell me that there's a handful of quarterbacks more talented than Jalen Hurts. Everyone's better than Jalen Hurts. Everyone's better than Jalen Hurts until it's time to beat Jalen Hurts.
That's right.
And at that point, Jalen Hurts is always showing up in the matters of time that matter most. And sure, you can say there are more talented guys. And maybe if you're comparing Jalen Hurts amongst the most talented quarterbacks in the league, maybe he's not top 3, maybe he's not top 5. But when you're talking about pure winning, which is really what matters when you boil things down, Jalen Hurts is up there with the best of the best.
Yes, he is. He 100% is, man. And this was a great game of vindication for Jalen Hurts. I've always believed in him ever since the Oklahoma days, ever since the Alabama days, obviously switched those there. To know that this man has had 11 different offensive coordinators and schemes to play through, and knowing now he is at the top of the mountain as the Super Bowl MVP, I would have been shocked if he didn't win the Super Bowl MVP. But like you said, man, this was just an absolute domination from front to back. I mean, you come out of the gates and you see that Kansas City is so focused on holding Saquon at bay, but it's like they were so focused on that they left their entire game plan offensively at home. I mean, it was 34-0 before the Chiefs were finally able to get on the board. Patrick Mahomes had never been shut out in his career, and he was shut out through about 3 quarters, which was the longest streak of it, the biggest deficit for Patrick Mahomes ever in his career. Arguably his worst game that he's ever played. And that's a big credit to the Philadelphia Eagles defensive line. JV, did you know there is 6 quarterbacks in Super Bowl history to be blitzed 0 times? All 6 of those quarterbacks lost. What does that mean? That means you have an elite pass rush, a Jordan Davis, a Jalen Carter, a Nolan Smith. You have Josh Sweat. You have Brandon Graham. Just an elite outing from Vic Fangio. And there's nothing more that you can say about this Philadelphia Eagles team to pull them down because they have stopped the three-peat. The first Super Bowl win, they jump in the middle of a potential three-peat for the Patriots. The second ever team in the Super Bowl era to have 2 Super Bowl wins, both of those by being 40-plus points. You guys heard me say it in the short. The 1990s 49ers were the only other team to do it. Of course, at the start of the game, you have that bad pass interference call, and I'm like, okay, here we go. This is how we're going to play it, right? Like, you guys are going to be chippy like this, and then they make up for it with the unnecessary roughness call kind of on Kansas City. And everything was kind of able to play out that way. I got to give a lot of respect to Philadelphia with the run, even though Kansas City was stuffing it, because Shannon Sharp said it well. When defenses are playing nickel like Spagnuolo will, you got to pull them back in. You got to put somebody up the middle like Saquon Barkley. And as soon as that was pulled back in, Jalen Hurts was throwing dots over the top. I mean, A.J. Brown was eating Trent McDuffie alive. You see the bomb to Devontae Smith, which clearly sealed it. And to know that Spags defense was so porous, so bad, that I felt like every wide receiver for the Eagles, every pass catcher was so open. There was very few contested catches. And of course, A.J. Brown had a couple of throws down the sideline as well. But the Eagles just getting so much pressure on Mahomes, the tight secondary from Philadelphia, best roster from top to bottom, just making Mahomes hold the ball longer. And I loved how they put their foot on the throat of the Chiefs as well, forcing a punt, being up 7-0. They just continued to run up the score. Kansas City had 1 first down in the entire first half. And that was on the first play of the game. I mean, they were just flat. They were outmatched. And Vic Fangio was literally exposing the Chiefs and Andy Reid and that porous offensive line. Joe Thuney, something's got to be done about him. We see some of the struggles that they've had as well. I mean, just some of the takeaways from the scoreboard and kind of how the numbers were just so out of Kansas City's favor. Kansas City held the ball for 5 minutes at one point while Philadelphia had 10 unanswered points. Of course, you have the back-to-back sacks. When does that ever happen for Patrick Mahomes? And then Cooper DeJean, the rookie, on his birthday. I felt like the game was over there. Like, when you have a critical turnover like that in a big game, and you can't do anything about it. I really felt like it was over at that point, and it was just a driver's seat for Philadelphia right there. No excuse not to win after being up 17-0. And this was a lot like that Bucks Chiefs Super Bowl. It didn't feel like it was going to be that bad because you knew coming in, I think it was Eric Fisher that had torn his ACL, I believe it was, an AFC Championship game. I think it was the round before that they had lost another offensive lineman as well. And, 17 minutes of time of possession at one point for Philly and just 17 yards for Kansas City with 3.5 minutes to go in the first half. Travis Kelce at one point had no catches on 3 targets. And JV, was it just me, or was Patrick Mahomes kind of running into sacks badly in this game?
Yeah, Mahomes, and I think I said this either on my show this week or somewhere, AJ. I was talking to someone that it was by far the most careless, uncharacteristic game I had seen from Mahomes throughout his entire career. Now, I'll give him some credit. He's been to, 5 Super Bowls now. If
Yep.
one of them's bad, I understand. But it was so uncharacteristic of Mahomes to turn over the ball so carelessly. One bad pick to Cooper DeJean, one bad pick to Zach Bond, which was a crazy pick, by the way. It was a great catch, but 3 turnovers for Mahomes was just completely out of the blue for me. I was expecting
Yep.
a well-oiled machine from Kansas City. And going
Yep.
back to your earlier points, AJ, even Jahan Dotson was getting work in. He had less than 20 receptions
Yes.
this year, and he was cooking that Kansas City defense. I think from Mahomes' perspective, and this is something I wanted to bring up with you and run it by you, but
Yeah.
I was expecting Mahomes to have his 28-3 Super Bowl. At some point, you know what I mean? I was
Yeah.
watching, I
Yeah.
watched Philly put up how much? I watched Philly put
34
up 30
unanswered.
points. Yeah. I
Mhm.
watched Philly put up 34 unanswered, and I was waiting for Mahomes to have his Tom Brady moment in the
Right.
Super Bowl where he cleans things up, organizes the offense, and brings things back. And it just never happened. It never
Yep.
unfolded that way. And that was a little shocking to me. Credit to Philly. They are pound for pound by far the best team in the league. I don't think
Yep.
anyone's remotely close right now.
They're
But for
not.
Mahomes, it was just such an odd performance from him. Pressure was bad. Receivers were dropping balls. That's great. I
Yep.
understand. I won't pin it all on Mahomes. It's never 100% on one player,
Yep.
but the quarterback is the most important position. And when you play like that, you can't expect to go anywhere in a Super Bowl game.
100%. When you're getting pressure with 4 and you blitz 0 times and you get 6 sacks, 1 off of the Super Bowl record, many pressures. I mean, everybody was getting a take at it, really, man. And when you look at Mahomes sometimes does not play his best games in the Super Bowl. He's trailed in all
True.
5 Super Bowls. He already has more interceptions and less touchdowns in 2 Super Bowl losses than Tom Brady does in 3 Super Bowl losses. So there's really levels to this, you know what I mean? And when you look at the fact that Mahomes has played the Niners twice, played the Eagles twice, and then played the Bucks once, and he's lost to the Eagles, he's lost to the Bucks. He takes a minute to get going in some of these big games. And that's a little weird to see from a guy who is in a lot of conversations, of course, with Tom Brady as one of the better quarterbacks that we've seen. And there's no question about that, but you guys heard me say it, and I'll say it again. This is arguably the best Super Bowl win of all time. The Eagles are the first team to record multiple Super Bowl victories against repeat-seeking teams. They stopped a potential three-peat in 2018 with Tom Brady, and they stopped an actual three-peat in 2025 against Patrick Mahomes. Jalen Hurts is the first player to play in a Super Bowl rematch, lose the first one, win the second one. That's something that Brady never did. And I'm not trying to put Hurts in the same conversation as Brady because that is completely disrespectful, but it is very rare to know that you play somebody as elite as Mahomes in the first Super Bowl matchup. You come back in the second one and you get your get back. There were 19 quarterbacks who made a Super Bowl debut, never saw the game again. Jalen Hurts is not one of those. They're the second team ever, like I said, to win 2 Super Bowls while posting 40-plus points in each win. Only the 1990s Niners have done that. Second largest halftime lead in Super Bowl history. Second largest lead in Super Bowl history. 1 sack away from the Super Bowl record. Jalen Hurts is the first quarterback in NFL history with 5 rushing and 5 passing touchdowns in a postseason, with 10 rushing and 10 passing touchdowns in a postseason, and with 5 rushing touchdowns in multiple postseason appearances. largest deficit of Mahomes' career. You stopped the three-peat. And above all else, you did it against the coach who was unable to bring you a championship in the 14 years of coaching there in Andy Reid. Jalen Hurts versus Patrick Mahomes head-to-head in the Super Bowl. Mahomes, 477 total yards, 25 first downs, 6 touchdowns, 3 turnovers. Jalen Hurts head-to-head against Patrick Mahomes, 654 total yards, 37 first downs, 7 touchdowns, 2 turnovers. Only Tom Brady and Jalen Hurts have consistently outplayed Mahomes on the biggest stage ever. Jalen Hurts had an 82% adjusted completion percent rate in this playoff run, 920 total yards, 10 touchdowns, 1 interception. He is your Super Bowl MVP. I mean, at one point, there were 22 plays in Chiefs territory, and there was 1 play in Eagles territory. At one point, Kansas City had 11 plays offensively. Philadelphia had 12 first downs. You got to give it up to Nick Sirianni. He's now one of 7 active head coaches with a Super Bowl win. And, talking about how the Chiefs didn't run the ball versus how the Eagles kept running it, even though Saquon got stopped up. Once the Chiefs bailed on the run, which was kind of quick for them, Philly knew, we're going to pin our ears back. We're going to get after you with 4. We're going to allow 7 defenders behind us to really play at a high level, and you're not going to get anything. And then you see Philadelphia continuing to run the ball. Saquon Barkley is an absolute weapon, and when you have the threat of him, you're going to bring those boxes in, be able to pop him over the top against a Jalen Watson, against a Trent McDuffie, and Kansas City has to go and get some better secondary playing. I mean, they just do. I'm not going to give a slight to the All-Pro and Trent McDuffie, but he was cooked in this game. A lot of the Chiefs secondary was absolutely cooked. Out of every quarterback who has played in 2 Super Bowls, Jalen Hurts is the only one with 70+% completion percentage. He's the only quarterback, again, to have lost that first matchup and then win the rematch in the Super Bowl. And the fact that the Chiefs didn't pass midfield until garbage time, I mean, this was an absolute domination, as we know, from start to finish, all 3 phases. Now, the big question is, the Chiefs are back at ground zero. Where do you think they go from here after a humiliating loss on top of the dynasty run?
Like I said, I think, honestly, AJ, Philly is by far the most they're so much further superior than every other team in the league. So
Yep.
I can say, okay, the Chiefs had a bad performance and match them up, but that is true for 31 other teams in the league. Like, your gold standard to compare to now is Philly, and I don't see things changing until there's some drastic moves made and teams really do improve. Philly stomped all over the NFC and stomped over KC. It wasn't close. I think for Kansas City, I think they'll tailor off for a few years. I think now is the time where you'll see Josh Allen in the Super Bowl, Lamar in the Super Bowl, Joe Burrow potentially return. I know we talked about that in a previous episode, AJ. I think this is their goal time within the next 1 to 2 years, where the Chiefs, again, they kind of get back into the groove of things. Maybe they don't make it all the way. I think this will open up an opportunity for them. Kansas City will be fine. They have Andy Reid still coaching. They have Mahomes. That's the secret sauce. Travis Kelce seems like he's kind of cruising into retirement. I don't know if it's this year. I don't know if it's the year after that, but eventually the inevitable will come. I do think Kansas City truly suffered from the loss of Rashee Rice early on. They didn't have a true number 1. Travis Kelce's older. He's not somebody you can completely rely on anymore, and that's just the fact of age. The O-line did have 3 Pro Bowlers, I think 2 All-Pros, something along those lines. They looked good, but again, in the Super Bowl, they failed them. Defensively, they were just absolutely exposed. But the one thing I will say, AJ, what else can you do? You dedicate your entire defensive game plan to the guy that dominated defenses all year and said, let's let Jalen Hurts throw the rock. Let's see what Jalen Hurts can do. And once he did, it was like, oh my goodness, what are we going to do? We game planned all year long, which, by the way, they did incredible things stopping the run. But once you have 2 different options in an offense, you pick your poison. They picked it. They stuck with it, and they got to lie in the bed that they made. You know what I mean?
Yup, 100%. And I love that KC's game plan was, you're going to beat us, Jalen Hurts. And Jalen Hurts said, hold my beer. I should have beat you the first time. I outplayed you the first time. Outside of the fumble, I was damn near perfect. This time, Jalen Hurts was elite. He is elite. He is a winner. He is a Super Bowl MVP. And all the haters, like you've said, JV, can take a seat. There were 31 other NFL quarterbacks this year that did not win a Super Bowl. Jalen Hurts is not one of them. There were 30 quarterbacks sitting at home this weekend, Super Bowl weekend. Jalen Hurts was not one of them. I've been a fan of this guy for a long time. I can't wait to see the excuses that people throw at him. It was his defense, his roster, Kellen Moore, Howie Roseman. Are we going to continue to fault players for the great situations that we're in? Are we just going to acknowledge greatness as it stands in front of us? Because we have no problem doing it for Brady. We have no problem doing it for Mahomes. We have no problem playing hypotheticals with Justin Herbert, Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen. We have no problem doing that. So let's simmer it down on the Jalen Hurts hate and actually give the man what he deserves.
Hey, it's AJL here. Appreciate you sticking to the end of the video here on YouTube. You could have chose any other show, but you chose my video, and for that, I'm very grateful. If you haven't already, please make sure to like and subscribe to the channel. Follow me on social media. Hit the bell on the channel so you never miss a post. Check me out on all social media platforms. Right here, you'll find a chance to subscribe to the show, a related video, and a playlist. See you guys in the next one.